Hi there, my name is Jarret, and welcome to Relitigated, the podcast where five friends roleplay a mock hearing of a real Supreme Court case. This is episode 1, Deshaney v. Winnebago County DSS. A couple of notes up front. First, this case does involve discussions of child abuse, and while we avoid going into detail as best that we can, listener discretion is advised. Second, no one you're about to hear is a lawyer, and nothing we say should be considered legal advice. We try our best to get the facts of the case as correct as possible, but you shouldn't trust our legal opinions, at all. Lastly, this being our first episode, we appreciate you listening. We have a lot to learn and improve, and we're looking forward to the journey ahead. We hope you'll join us. All that out of the way, let's hop into the session, which we record live with all five of us. What the actual answer should be.
Man, can you imagine if the Supreme Court was real? How cool that would be.
What? That's crazy talk.
Oh, wait, it is. And they decide our fate.
My name is Jarret. I am one of your two hosts. I'm joined by Nikki. Say hi, Nikki.
Hi, Nikki.
So Nikki and I will present the case. We have flipped a coin. We will, one of us will argue as the petitioner. One of us will argue as the respondent. And of course, we need some justices. So we are joined by three friends who were not doing anything on a Thursday night, which worked out real well.
Wearing my best wig just for you, buddy.
We have no life. We'll just put that out there.
So we have two associate justices. Our first associate justice is Chris. How's it going, Chris?
Hello, Chris. Oh, wait, no, my name's Chris.
And our other associate justice is Adam.
Hey, I'm really upset about this whole associate justice thing. Can we talk about this later?
No.
You can say associate to the Chief Justice if that's helpful.
That actually does make me feel better, yeah.
Okay, all right, cool.
And our Chief Justice is Sarah. Welcome, Sarah.
Hey, yo. Chief Justice appointed by God themselves.
I'm pretty sure that's how our Supreme Court works, yeah.
It's true.
Yeah,
honestly, though.
That's very similar to how the United States Supreme Court works, so I'm just falling in line.
Did we mention we are not lawyers?
Nope.
Not lawyers. Yeah, no. Not even, I don't even, no.
What even is the law? Yeah. As such, nothing you're going to hear today should be construed as legal advice in any way, shape, or form.
Please don't sue us. We are poor.
That's why we're not Supreme
now,
Court
our three justices, actually have no idea what case we're going to be discussing tonight. Isn't that true, justices?
Very true.
I have no awareness of case law. What?
Excellent. So we will be presenting the case to the justices for the first time, and also to you, our dear audience. And we'll move into arguments. We'll give the justices a chance to make their decisions. They do not have to agree. One justice can be for, two justices can be against, or vice versa. That's fine. It does not have to be unanimous, but they do have to tell us why they believe what they believe.
Only one winner by pinfall or submission, though. That's very important.
No, that's in the lower courts.
Oh, that's District Circuit Court. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
Mistake. That's why you're not Chief Justice.
Yeah. Actually, no, that's a really good point, Chief Justice.
That's why you're the associate too. We'll wrap it up with the actual decision that was rendered by the court, and we'll get all in our feelings about it. Nikki, would you like to present the case?
Yes. And so first, I'm going to start with a trigger warning because this case is about child abuse. We try not to get too graphic about things, but it is, it's going to be kind of heavy. So just FYI, exercise your discretion. And And so with that, we will take it on. And the case that we are going to discuss is called Deshaney v. Winnebago County Department of Social Services. And should I go into the facts of the case, or do you want to?
Yeah, have at it.
Okay. All right. So the facts of the case, briefly, and we are, people's names are generally publicly available, sure, but we're just going to use initials because why not? We don't necessarily need to blast everybody's business everywhere, but
Yeah, the names are not ultimately important to the case itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you sickos really want to know about it, just Google it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, J.D. was born in Wyoming. A year later, his parents divorced. His father got custody and moved to Winnebago County, Wisconsin. 2 years after that, when J.D. is around 2 or 3, the Winnebago County Department of Social Services, or DSS, is informed of allegations of child abuse. His father was interviewed, he denied the allegations, there was no further action. A year later, when he was around 3 or 4, J.D. is treated at a hospital for bruises and abrasions. Based upon suspicion of child abuse, DSS was notified. The hospital was awarded temporary custody of J.D.
They can do that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like, the hospital can, own a kid?
Yeah, I mean, if a court says they can.
While the child is
in the
admitted
hospital
to that hospital.
Okay.
Is the hospital the mother or the father on the birth certificate?
Administer foster parent.
Also, point of order. I'm surprised that there's even enough people in Wyoming at this time for a social services division to exist.
Oh, this is Wisconsin.
I'm surprised there was enough people in Wisconsin for social services to exist. 1979? That's like prehistory. That's so far before I was born. This isn't real. Wait a second. Were there even phones back then?
You know what? Actually, I don't know that there were phones even mentioned in this, in the, description of the facts.
Good Lord. So they just sent letters to communicate? This must have taken so long.
They wrote columns in the
things
newspaper.
do take a very long time in this case. In the days that followed, there was an interagency team meeting to consider the situation. The team was insufficient evidence of child abuse to keep J.D. in custody. The team made several recommendations for J.D.'s protection, which his father agreed to follow. J.D. was then returned to his father's custody. 1 month later, J.D. was treated for suspicious injuries at the ER, which notified the DSS caseworker. In the following 6 months, the caseworker visited the home monthly, during which the worker observed injuries to the child and the father's failure to follow the recommendations. The caseworker documented this in her files and also documented her suspicion that the child was still being abused. She did not take any action beyond this.
I got a question. What type of injuries are we talking about here? We talking about bumps and bruises and scrapes? Or are we talking about his fingernails were mysteriously removed?
You're going to want to let her just finish.
Oh.
How dare I interrupt the solicitor? Do we have solicitors in the middle of her soliloquy? Do we have soliloquies? How does any of this work?
We're not lawyers, so we don't know.
I think the interruptions are mostly during the argument
Objection.
times. And also, you're the justice. You don't object.
Overruled.
Hey guys, once again, I want to reiterate, we are literally not lawyers at all.
Not even close.
Don't even have a job.
This is, you get what you get, and this is it. So, continue, please. Back to the case.
So, let's see. At the end of that year, J.D. was again treated at the ER. The ER reported suspected child abuse, but DSS did not act beyond that. The caseworker made 2 more visits to the home and was told that J.D. was too sick to see her, so the caseworker was not able to see the child.
A couple months after that, J.D. suffered physical abuse that resulted in a life-threatening coma. When he underwent emergency surgery, medical providers found multiple injuries demonstrating ongoing and long-time abuse. J.D. survived, but due to the injury to his brain, his cognitive functioning was so impaired that the prognosis was that he would spend the rest of his life in an institution. In terms of the procedural history, J.D. and his biological mother sued the Winnebago County DSS and DSS employees in federal court. They alleged that the agency's failure to act to protect him from his father deprived him of his liberty without due process of law under the 14th Amendment. The district court granted summary judgment for Winnebago County DSS. The case was appealed to the Court of Appeals, which affirmed this decision. The Supreme Court decided to hear the case.
Lucky for you, you don't have to decide right now, because we're going to argue it for you.
Yeah, fight.
Yes, facts. Oh wait, yeah, fight.
Just like the real Supreme Court, there will be a petitioner, which I will be playing the part of the petitioner. This is the one bringing the case, appealing the case to the Supreme Court. And Nicole will play the part of the respondent, who is responding to the petition in front of the court. The petitioner goes first with the right to reserve time if they so choose, followed by the respondent. And if time was reserved, and then the petitioner would talk out the rest of their time. I don't actually know how much time they get in front of the court. I want to say it's 10 minutes. It's some very small number of minutes that they get to actually argue. We're going to do 7, maximum of 7 minutes.
And of course, the justices are free to ask questions at any point.
As is our divine right.
Yes.
Imbued upon us by God.
You can
Correct.
interrupt us at
It's
will.
holy.
Ask us any question you want, any clarifying
right
questions. You can pontificate.
Can we send you to jail at whim?
Can I bring my
be-
cat on as a guest Chief Justice?
You could also be absolutely silent for the full 7 minutes. That is an option.
The Clarence Thomas.
Good to know. My cat might speak more than me, but
Yeah,
We'll see.
same.
we'll see how it goes.
Very opinionated.
She was screaming earlier.
All right. I'm going to put 7 minutes on the clock for myself.
Whose clock?
Okay. Oh, do you? Okay, so
Do
you
we have a clock?
are
Is
you
it
tracking
God's
it?
clock?
I'm
is
gonna. Well, I just wanted to
divine
be able to
clock.
see. You could go ahead and start the timer for me, and let me know
Okay.
when to start. I'll set a timer for you. Just give me an update if I'm down to a minute, and then maybe 30 seconds before
Okay.
my time expires.
All right. And 3, 2, 1, begin.
All right, here we go. Miss Chief Justice, and may it please the court, we submit that the Department of Social Services has violated the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment in its failure to protect the life and the liberty of the child who was harmed in this heinous act. DSS, the Department of Social Services, is a state agency. It is charged by law with a duty to protect the welfare of children. When abuse was first reported, the agency looked into it, but they didn't do anything. When the child arrived at the hospital for the first time, the agency had no qualms whatsoever with exercising its authority to remove custody of the child from the father in favor of the hospital temporarily through a court order. They exhibited the ability to exercise their power under the law to protect the child. They convened a team, and the agency ultimately decided that there was no abuse and the child was returned to the protection of his father. But over a period of 6 months, social workers recorded further suspicious injuries to the child, and they did not act further other than just recording it into their notes. So we have a full log from social workers documenting evidence of abuse, but no action, despite the fact that they had shown that they have the ability to take action and protect the child.
Did the father sign like a terms of service agreement before this whole situation? Because I feel like that's important. Like an end user license agreement kind of situation? Or is that like implicit just by living in the state?
Citizenship, I think, implied.
Yeah. Is that a thing? Do you like agree to an implicit terms of service by being a citizen paying taxes? Is it paying taxes?
Bill
Is
of
that how you
Rights?
opt in?
It's the
I
Bill
don't
of
know.
Rights.
I'm not a
Voting.
lawyer.
I think voting.
Interesting. If
Is-
you've ever
is
been
the opt-in?
arrested, you're definitely participating in the system. That's for sure.
Yes. Shortly after, the child was again in the hospital for injuries that were consistent with abuse, but the agency did nothing to protect the child. They merely recorded in their ledgers, just like good bureaucrats, what happened. Subsequent abuse removed any and all doubt as the child was rendered impaired from brain damage for the rest of their life. Now, Section 1 of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution states that no state shall, and I quote, deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. The child was entitled to protection of their life and liberty under the law. The specific law that aimed to protect children that created the very agency that failed to protect the child. Now, there is no suggestion that the agency failed to provide due process to the father. They convened teams to investigate. They obtained a court order in one case. They sent caseworkers to check multiple times. Caseworkers who, at least 2 occasions, I believe, were instructed or told that the child just could not be seen and failed to exercise any additional authority to demand to see the child. They continued to trust the father at the endangerment of the child. And potentially, maybe I shouldn't go this far, but the law says their job was to protect the child, a duly passed law of representatives of the people signed by the governor, and they failed to do so. Now, at each phase, the agency deferred to the due process rights of the father, but it failed to do the same for the child. Now, our laws cannot afford only protection for the rights of the perpetrator, especially when the state is actively documenting the crime. There is a duty to act, and in failing to act, we believe that the state failed to protect the rights of liberty and life that the child should have been afforded. Now, for the constitutional question, it is not our belief that the state should be proactively intervening in households across America. That's not what we're saying. Rather, an agency of the state, which is created by an act of the legislature of that state, was entrusted with the safeguarding of the welfare of the child because of should have been safeguarding the welfare of the child due to several credible accusations of abuse. And as such, in this case, the state was made a party to the welfare of the child. So this isn't just like the state should be going door to door, knocking on, every parent's house and doing inspections. This is the state has an agency that investigates and should act in these instances, and in doing so failed to protect the child, and in doing so failed to protect the rights of the child.
And you've got like a minute and a half left.
Thank you. We believe to prevent future such incidents and to safeguard the welfare of countless children who are currently entrusted to their predators, we ask that the court find that the Winnebago County Department of Social Services failed in its charge under the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment to protect the life and the liberty of the child in this particular circumstance. Thank you much. I yield to questions in my 3 remaining seconds.
You have 50. A little more.
I'll defer to my associate justices first.
You would.
I would. That is my divine right.
No further questions.
God told you so.
God's a favorite justice. Hold on. Wait a second. Are you arguing that there's some sort of implied warranty that everybody is sort of entering into like an implicit contract with all the state agencies that they're going to like uniformly uphold their duties per the letter of the state law that gives them responsibilities and rights? Because that's nuts.
It is our belief that in this particular case, the state was had authority that it failed to execute, and in doing so, it violated the civil rights of the child by eliminating his ability to his due process to protect his life and his liberty, which they were entrusted to do.
I don't want to be the person that's like protecting bureaucrats, like it's not really my vibe. But I don't know. I don't know if I'm not, again, hey guys, not a lawyer. Is this really their burden? I mean, they did step in, do something. I mean, can't like, I don't know. Do they have the ability or the legal right to just rip a kid away from their parent if they suspect child abuse, especially during this time? I don't know. I want to fight for the kid.
I'm going to sue the cops for every time they don't arrest my neighbors for playing their music too loud, because they're depriving me of my right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of fucking happiness. I just want to sleep in.
I believe my time has expired, by the way.
It is.
Yeah.
But if there's if there's any last questions, I feel like, there's some cool thoughts happening.
Yeah. Just to respond, if I may, since it seemed directed, it is our belief that in this instance, the state was aware. The state had exercised authority in one case, so they showed that they had the ability to recognize the situation and step in through the courts, through the legal system, to get temporary custody of the child while the child was in the hospital, and they never rose to that level of care from that point forward.
Classic.
And doing so,
was doing a good job in the first place and setting precedents.
I mean, it just sounds like a classic bureaucratic move to me, in my opinion. But is it illegal? I don't know. Time will tell.
I would feel like
is it illegal to suck?
Our argument is that it's a violation of the child's civil rights.
My dear solicitor, most verily, are you saying that it's illegal to suck?
I reserve the negative time I have left.
Last thought, maybe a last parting thought before we hear the next set of arguments. I kind of agree. It's like it wouldn't have been my gut reaction to sue the state. It would have been like, okay, the dad clearly assaulted the kid.
Well, the dad has no assets, clearly.
Yeah, obviously. Right. He's broke.
He's probably broke. But I do agree that the state did not fulfill its burden based on the evidence. But I would like to hear the next set of arguments.
Okay.
If that's true, I got a lot of people to sue. I have so many people to sue. My life, liberty, and happiness has been impeded by at least a dozen federal and state agencies by my reckoning. And I have some letters to write. As soon as I retain a lawyer, I find someone willing to work pro bono, we're good.
Yeah, let's not overly ambitiously admit to anything on this recording just yet.
Lawyers are expensive.
I'm going to put 7 minutes on the clock and turn it over to Nikki to respond to my petition. In 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay. So I really just want to start by going back to our initial question, which is whether Winnebago County's failure to provide JD with protection from his father's abuse violate his rights under the due process clause. And I want to go back by really sort of highlighting the due process clauses. So in the Fifth Amendment, it says that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And in the 14th Amendment, it says no state shall deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So if you look at the due process clause, it was written with this intention to limit the state's power to act. So the intention of this clause is to limit the state's power to deprive people of, these basic fundamental rights. So that means that this is really written about the government, to prevent the government from abusing its power or using its power to oppress people. So on the flip side, that means that there really is no guarantee for like minimal levels of safety or security. So given, sort of what undergirds the due process clause, you can't really interpret it as a requirement that the state protect somebody's life, liberty, and property from other harms. It's really to protect these from the government. So an individual isn't entitled to government aid or services. So if you're looking at this clause, there isn't really any requirement that's specified for the state to act to sort of like go forward and to protect life, liberty, and property, especially when it's talking about private citizens, non-government actors. So just a regular person who doesn't have the power of the state. So, since this clause doesn't require that the government provides aid, it doesn't, require the government to step in, then that would mean that the state can't be liable for not providing aid, especially if the state wasn't the person who actually created the harm. So, as was pointed out, the harm was done by this child's father. It wasn't the state that harmed this child. And as was also pointed out by the Chief Justice, if the state had moved too soon and just like snatched the child up immediately, then there would have been the issue of improperly intruding into the parent-child relationship that is protected by the due process clause. So I would argue that although, there was some, failure and terrible, awful outcomes here, it's not the due process clause. Really, it's intended to handcuff the government, not to enable it to step in. So that means that people aren't entitled to any sort of services or protection from the government, at least not under the due process clause. And I would really encourage the justices to really kind of keep that in mind because, this is really talking about how this works under the due process clause.
So if I don't pay my taxes, that's like a problem. But if the government doesn't spend my taxes the way they said they were going to do, it was just a suggestion. I get it. I dig it.
Well, I mean, the Constitution was really sort of outlining or at least this clause was really outlining the limits. This is intended to limit government action and intrusion.
Yeah, the monopoly of force is unilateral. I get it. I vibe. I think that, one of the problems here is that we're being asked to decide these pivotal cases in an age of extreme polarization and what's the word? Cynicism, deep, pervasive cynicism. So I just kind of go about my life expecting that the government's not really going to keep their promises, but except for the one that they promised to throw me in jail if I don't pay taxes.
True.
So, well, it's not so much about the paying taxes. It's, is there a crime or something outlawed in the law? And is there a whole process, a court process before you get, so it's not about you necessarily getting snatched up and put in jail. Is there a full sort of process that governs that so that the state can't just snatch up anybody for no reason?
What I would like to know, and this is, maybe out of scope, but if the parents were divorced, right? The two parents were divorced, then why did the father continue to hold custody of the child even after the child was temporarily assigned custody into the hospital? Because that seems to be a failure, right? And like zooming out on a very specific, I guess, scenario, but it seems to be a failure that the child was then granted back to the father after the child was, temporarily held in custody at the hospital.
I thought you were going to go sharp left turn with this and blame the mother.
Blame women.
One minute, by the way.
No, but it's like, okay, the custody, like that's, another angle, right? Is to think about this from like a custody standpoint. The father clearly was unfit to be the child's father.
It was definitely mom's fault. I agree, Associate Justice.
Yeah, like why wouldn't the state decide that the father was unfit based on the evidence provided, and then
why was there no custody battle?
Yeah, why was that not brought to the table? Like, was the mother also not a viable option for custody? Were there even discussions about this? I feel like that would fall underneath.
Right? How did the hospital become his mom? That's what I heard.
Who are they?
So the hospital went in front of the court and they took the appropriate steps and due process in intervening in this parent-child relationship. So it was a formalized process where they went in front of a judge.
So the disembodied corporate entity that is the hospital, that was the most responsible person in this entire operation, was the hospital?
Time, by the way, but I'll let you finish out that thought.
Yeah, that's my gut feeling as well.
But after the hospital, the hospital didn't take indefinite custody of the kid.
No.
So
they worked out
questions.
They worked out a plan based off of input from multiple stakeholders and a voluntary agreement.
Shoddy plan. All right.
Yeah, really, anything that involves trust in other human beings, shoddy plan.
Yep.
That is it for arguments. Thank you, Nikki, for that.
Good fight.
Is the state really trying to argue that the father didn't beat the kid hard enough? Because that's just gross.
No, the state is arguing
we have transitioned into decision time for our justices. So feel free to discuss amongst yourselves. Nikki and I are here as your scribes or your clerks. So if you want to ask us questions, we are out of argument mode. We'll provide you with facts, but we're no longer arguing for either position.
Oh, the fight is over. Okay, so guys, I do like the where was mom approach in this. I think it's a very viable question, right? I'm a little confused about why the hospital. I understand that. Yeah, okay, we gave the quote unquote abusive father, he was abusive, a plan to not abuse his child, and he didn't follow it. I'm just confused as to why there weren't more safeguards in place during the execution of this plan to stop this kid from getting irreparable brain damage. I feel like
I can't believe that Barack Obama made Obamacare, and Obamacare made it legal to give this child brain damage, and that's just wrong.
Yeah, I mean,
don't you agree,
the timeline's fucked.
Born?
Yeah, he was hey, I said the timeline is fucked. Thanks, Obamacare.
1980.
Yeah.
Not in Chicago.
It was but a glimmer in Barack Obama's eye at the time. He was a junior senator, I assume, at the moment.
Romney care. That's what I'm going to blame.
Yeah, Romney care. Nice, even better.
So, how did this originally get brought to the attention of the authorities? Let's go back. Let's go way back. Let's go back to the beginning.
It just says allegations of child abuse were made to the Winnebago County Department of Social Services. Who's to say who those allegations were brought upon by?
If I remember the facts correctly, it was the girlfriend of the father.
No, it was the father's second wife. I think the girlfriend.
Second wife. Yes, and then shortly thereafter, the child arrived in the hospital. With injuries consistent with the abuse that was described.
Whoa, guys, did anyone consider it was the second wife who did it?
Well, the second wife was the one who went to the police to be like, what
she
the hell?
snitched.
What better way to take the heat off your trail than to come report the crime?
So you're telling me there was probably a third wife then?
There was probably a third wife. At least a second
Very
girlfriend.
messy.
Okay, wait a second.
Very
What
messy
are these
relationship.
injuries? We haven't gotten into the nature of these injuries. We're talking about like
That is
bumps
true.
and scrapes and bruises. Like, I know there's brain damage involved, but for God's sakes, I've given myself brain damage on numerous occasions. It can happen at any time.
True.
So, like, what kind of injuries are we talking about?
It's just
Let's
bruises and
see.
abrasions.
I once slid straight into the wheel of a car,
It's miraculous I didn't die sledding in
Head on.
college.
honestly. Oh, I was like a child at the time.
Unfortunate.
Snuck out.
Yeah.
The only thing I can say to this is injuries that would lead medical staff to suspect abuse. And having been an emergency responder, we're trained on things like, are they injured in places that are atypical for like a child to injure themselves? Like a skinned knee, totally normal, child injury. Bruises on the bottom of the feet, on both feet, very unlikely that a child is going to do that. Much more likely that it's abuse.
So I'm curious about what. I'm just really stuck on what happened after the father agreed to follow these safety recommendations after they determined that there was not sufficient evidence of child abuse. Like,
I had no idea. You're not supposed to beat the bottom of your kid's feet. But thank you, Winnebago County.
Dang, they didn't teach me that in dad school. Like, I'm just confused about...
The switch I was using was too dang big.
The kid went back to the ER, treated again for suspicious injuries. I feel like, is there not some sort of file or something that the state can... Okay, so the kid went back to the ER 1 month after the father agreed to follow safety recommendations, yet the state didn't really step in to say, hey, why is this kid back in the ER for suspicious injuries, besides, just their regular monthly visits. But even during their monthly visits to the home, they saw that there were injuries to the child, failure to follow the safety recommendations. Like, literally, the kid, dad failed the test, okay? And the state was like, I mean, we're doing our job, like, we're showing up to the house, but, like,
yeah,
they weren't.
Can you honestly say you did the best possible job you could have at your work today? You put in the best possible.
You deserve a gold star.
Do you make Employee of the Month today? I think not. I certainly didn't. Everyone has an off day. Some people have dozens of off days in a row.
I think the bureaucrats should feel bad for
that.
And I'm sure they do.
I'm trying to think, did the Department of Social Services, did they truly not do their job where they were showing up to the house 6 months every time, except in the case when they were not able to see JD that in the last moment? That's the point where they should have alerted the authorities, right? I don't know what the rules are. Like, that's the place where I'm like, all right, if the caseworker was unable to see the child, then that means they need to alert the police, right? And
because if not, what are they even doing there? I mean, who cares, right? They're just showing up
new
and
rule.
saying, "Hey guys."
Right. If the child is missing, you assume them missing.
Yeah, right.
Seems so obvious when you say it out loud, Chief.
You're going to the house to do wellness checks on the child, and then you go to the house and you don't see the child, and they're just like, "It's probably in the backyard. He's fine. No follow up, no nothing." Oh, by the way, next day, child comes in with a brain injury. Okay, maybe we should... Hey, maybe you should be better at your job. I don't know. I mean, I feel like there something major slipped through the cracks here, and I feel like whoever was doing these visits just really was just trying to get a paycheck. I mean, I don't know.
I'm wonder what is the count or the unique count of social workers that were on this case? Was it just one, or was it many?
Oh yeah. Do we know? Fact checkers?
It was just the one.
Oh, this guy.
This
Okay.
or gal, you know. I'm just
All right,
wondering.
I think I see where the
All
problem
right.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how many
Okay.
cops were involved?
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's true. The police were not mentioned at all. I mean, I know it's not part of the case, but
When it comes to sort of involvement in social services and child and family services, it is pretty much the province of the
DSS.
of the caseworkers. So like even when police are like called to like a thing, like even they will file reports with social services for follow-up.
Can social services kill with impunity as well?
Jeez.
Oh, not lawyers.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just going from what I see, man.
Maybe. I mean, listen, from everything that I've seen on TV, because I personally have never dealt with social services myself, knock on wood. From everything that I've seen on TV, it just feels like whoever this caseworker was did just like the worst job imaginable.
Bare minimum.
I'm not seeing any proof that they fulfilled their duties in protecting this child. Now, I guess, right, the root of the case is, well, was it really their legal duty to protect the rights of this child? I feel like, again, hey guys, not a lawyer, but just from the nature of what I know social services does, yeah, it's your job. Like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? Like, you go to the house, you don't see the kid, and you're just like, it's fine. Next day, the kid's basically dead. What are we doing? I don't know.
That's the tipping point for me, is the fact that they were not able to confirm. They failed the wellness check, right?
Yeah.
And, all the other times, a little borderline, but like they really didn't do much illegal, but like actually failing to perform the wellness check on the child.
Yeah, that's an interesting double-edged sword.
See the child.
In our whole defederated bureaucracy, right? Like, maybe, sure, you could argue, we haven't decided yet because we're still in the middle of our case, but you could argue that it was the agency's fault. Fine, maybe they're liable. But it never gets to the point of actually like drilling down and assigning culpability to the individuals within the agency that actually screwed up, that, showed up to work, were having a bad day and made that critical error that led to the terrible outcome that we're discussing today. And in some ways, that's very comforting to know that, you will never be under the circumstances of being personally held liable for some shitty outcome that was largely due to circumstances outside your control, even if it was initiated by your action. But at the same time, can we ever have true justice if we can't draw and quarter these individual faceless bureaucrats who screwed up?
No. Bring back drawing and quartering.
That's basically my thesis. Sorry, I feel like we're getting off track.
Yes, a reminder, the question here is, did the state agency violate the rights of the child through its failure of action?
Draw and quarter the entire agency. Start over. The king has spoken.
Yeah, and the dad. He seems shitty.
Yeah, actually, while we're at it, let's draw and quarter the dad, too. You seem shady.
Yeah.
Okay. What rights does a child really have? Aren't they property? I'm unclear on that.
Well, depends on who you ask, probably.
In the state of Wisconsin, are children property?
Depending on how you rule, you might be answering that question.
Wait, for real?
I would say, listen, I would even argue, again, hey guys, not a lawyer, I would argue that in a way, this is a small child. They should be under even more protections than an adult, they are just, wandering around the world barely sentient, a child of that age, right? This is like a preschooler.
Did the kid exercise his right to self-defense? Come on.
Yeah.
I believe at the time of the brain
4?
damage, they were 4.
Yeah.
4.
Oh, come on.
All right, so his striking game is probably pretty weak, but he's got a good ground game because he's always on the ground.
Yeah,
Always.
That's true. Did anybody think about giving the kid a knife?
Ooh.
There you go. Weaponize the kid. That's what the state failed to do. Weaponize the kids.
Honestly,
so he's on
though,
an even playing field.
then that would be child would be child endangerment, right? The perfect. Then we can just go after the dad, and that's it.
Yeah. We finally found the child endangerment.
We got it, guys.
There it is.
Knife hands.
Good job.
took us a while, but we finally found it in this case.
We've finally given this child lethal capabilities, and that's really what this whole court session was all about.
The years of hospital visits or anything like that. It was.
We've cybernetically altered this child.
Does anybody feel like they have a firm opinion, or are you still wrestling?
I'm barely wrestling. Honestly, at this point, I'm. Yeah, whatever you're wrestling with, I don't know if we can help at this point.
That's why I'm not the Chief Justice.
My
inner demons.
Chosen princess. Yep.
I'm as unfortunate as it is, I do feel that the caseworker did do they did their job. They were showing up and doing the visits there. I think the issue is that there was not further action taken by people in this child's life, like around this child, whether that's the mom or whoever, to kind of go after them sooner. Like 1979, 1980, that's 1, 2, 3. It's like 3 years worth of visits. I just, I feel like they could have gone after someone, whether that was the state or not, sooner, right? And so that's my feeling, is like there should have been more done sooner, which is shitty, but that is.
I agree. I mean, certainly a lot of gaps in whatever the hell this kid's family was doing during this time. I mean, they all just sound like terrible people, I'm gonna be honest.
The court has spoken.
The court has spoken. The family sounds terrible. And it's a shame.
You're all bad. You should feel bad.
Yeah, I think everybody involved should feel terrible. And I hope that they have nightmares every night about how terrible that they are.
Yeah, I'm about to say something terrible. Like, listen, I want kids to not get pushed down the stairs to death or whatever happened to this poor kid. That would be nice, but it's not the state's obligation to make sure that kids don't get pushed down the stairs to death. I mean, it is, clearly, but we got to draw limits somewhere. Murder's the limit. I guess so. That feels right. The father's culpable, right? If we extend obligation and liability to the state, to the letter of the law, saying that they need to support our right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, that's nuts. That means that we need universal basic income. That means that thought crime needs to be aggressively prosecuted to prevent anyone from infringing on anyone else's life, liberty, or pursuit of happiness. Far be it for me to espouse libertarianism, but you got to draw a line somewhere.
It's life, liberty, and property. Actually, those are the fundamental rights. Not pursuit.
How else are you going to be happy? How else are you going to achieve happiness than pursuing property? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, in this economy.
Pursuing
property.
Literally,
nobody's happy. Yeah, I am going to rest on the case. I don't know if that's the right term. Rest my case. I don't have a case to rest. I didn't argue anything.
You issue an opinion.
Yeah, I'm going to issue my
What's your opinion?
I am under the opinion that because the state was brought into this situation, into this domestic violence situation, and had committed to, the safety checks and the monthly visits or however often they were, what is killing me is the fact that they literally did a visit where they did not see the kid. And then the next month, the kid had traumatic brain injuries and was never the same again.
Oh, don't forget that during the 6 months up to, the caseworker was documenting her suspicion that there was still abuse happening.
I'm just very curious, what is the point of social services in protecting children and their due process if they're just going to show up to a house, take notes, and do nothing about it. Or they're going to show up to a house, take notes, not even see the kid in question that's being abused, and do nothing about it. I feel like the failure to action there from this caseworker and by extension the whole organization definitely did this kid dirty. And while obviously they weren't the ones abusing the child, they were put in place to help protect this child, and I would like to think that they failed to do so based on the arguments and evidence provided.
All right. So it sounds like you're of the opinion that, yes, the Winnebago County DSS, did violate the rights of the child by failure to do their job under the law.
Yes, because if not, then why are they even there?
Okay, fair enough. And Adam, I believe your opinion, if I can summarize, was if we argue that Winnebago County, violated the child's rights, then every time anything bad happens to anybody, that's a violation of their rights that the state failed to preemptively resolve.
Call me old-fashioned, but I think Dad violated the kid's rights. Maybe Mom. I'm still leaving myself open to that supposition. But
Fair
certainly
enough.
not the state. I mean, if that's the case, then every time that the state takes taxes from me, they're harming me because they're depriving me of my liberty to buy Tekken.
That's very specific.
Chris, this makes you the swing vote on our Supreme Court.
Chris, don't fuck it up.
I feel like I already have.
Chris, do you want that associate to the Chief Justice job? Be very careful with your next
chosen
statement.
by God over here.
Well, I am leaning towards the child's neglect, right? And that's kind of where who is doing the neglecting? Is it the state that's neglecting the child, or is it the family of the child, the guardians of the child, right? The hospital is the only one, as we've stated already. The hospital is the only one that actually did not neglect the child, which is amazing to me. But the father and mother, the guardians of this child, obviously neglected it. And by leaving by leaving the child in the hands of the parents or the guardians of the child, I feel that the child was endangered. And I think at the end there, the DSS was doing their job up until they were unable to perform the last wellness check, where they failed to do their duty. And as a result, the child was, essentially killed without being killed, right? Life was taken away. But at the same time, the DSS, is that their job, right? Is it their job to remove a child from a bad situation? I don't think so. I don't think that's their job. So their job is to perform the wellness checks, is to perform, in the case of this child, I think the DSS did their job, but they failed to go the extra mile. And it resulted in a child that is, mentally disabled for the rest of his or her life, which is difficult. But
do you feel their violation rises to the level of, or do you feel their failure rises to the level of violating the civil rights of the child?
I do not feel that the DSS. I don't feel like they acted illegally. In that way, no.
Sounds like you're on Adam's side. You were joining
I'll remember
Adam's
this.
opinion. maybe not joining in Adam's specific opinion, but you agree on the fundamentals.
I agree on the fundamentals.
Yes,
I agree on the fundamentals because,
wow.
But I do feel the child was endangered.
Eat it, Chief Justice. In name only.
So in 2-1 decision,
God will remember this.
a 2-1 decision, The Relitigated Podcast Supreme Court has ruled that the Winnebago County Department of Social Services did not violate the rights of the child, the civil rights of the child through
Get a
their
job,
failure.
kid.
Though everyone seems to acknowledge that there was a failure, it was not a violation of civil rights.
It was not a violation of the Due Process Clause.
Of the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment and also the 5th Amendment. But interestingly, different opinions. So on the specifics. I love it.
I'm willing to take on some of the burden of this collective failure. This is partially my fault for believing in the system.
Probably.
Yeah, I can't believe you.
Who can even keep track of how many children I've contributed to the murders of through my inaction?
This is the bad place.
This is the bad place. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice.
This is where the justices get hammered and navel gaze about their decisions.
Yes, this is the
right.
Last
That's in the
10 minutes
Constitution,
of a Hallmark movie.
Speaking of the decisions, would you like to know how it actually ended up?
That child now Supreme Court Chief Justice.
I know. I was gonna say.
That child happens to be running for president of the United States.
Actually, J.D. Vance.
Too real.
Too real. Too recent. Too real.
It's too soon.
Yes. So the actual Supreme Court was not a unanimous decision, just like our court, but the majority opinion was the same as our court.
Eat it, little kid.
Wow.
Nikki has
Winnebago
more.
Dropped on you, son.
Nikki has more of the specifics than I do, as she has looked into this far more than I have. But at a high level, I think it was Rehnquist who wrote the majority opinion, and the argument was that not actually dissimilar from the argument that Adam had made, which is that it's impossible to assume that the government can be everywhere doing everything, protecting everybody all the time. The Constitution doesn't put the burden on the government to be the protector. The Constitution protects you from the government.
Oh, but I mean, these guys had one job.
I actually feel dumber for having accidentally agreed with the real jurisprudence.
You should feel bad. JD
I am
will
bad.
remember.
Now, like I said, it wasn't entirely. Not everybody agreed on the court, and I am going to read to you Justice Blackmun's a portion of his dissent, which is pretty famous, and is certainly his most famous bit of writing. It was quoted by Clinton at his retirement ceremony. And when he comes up in conversation, apparently in law circles, my understanding is this is what comes up from his writing. So I'm just going to read this real quick.
Ooh, tea.
Quote, "Poor Joshua, victim of repeated attacks by an irresponsible, bullying, cowardly, and intemperate father, and abandoned by the respondents, who placed him in a dangerous predicament and who knew or learned what was going on, and yet did essentially nothing except, as the court revealingly observes, dutifully recorded these incidents in their files. It is a sad commentary upon American life and constitutional principles, so full of late of patriotic fervor and proud proclamations about, quote, liberty and justice for all, that this child, J.D., now is assigned to live out the remainder of his life profoundly retarded." His writings, I'm wording, not mine. Josh,
We won't cancel.
I heard you fucking hesitate on that. That was great.
JD and his mother, as petitioners here, deserve, but now are denied by this court, the opportunity to have the facts of their case considered in the light of the constitutional protection that 42 U.S.C. 1983 is meant to provide.
I also want to add the dissent that was written by Justice Brennan, where he says, Today's opinion construes the Due Process Clause to permit a state to displace private sources of protection and then, at the critical moment, to shrug its shoulders and turn away from the harm that it is promised to try to prevent. Because
That's
I
what I'm
cannot
saying.
agree that our Constitution is indifferent to such indifference, I respectfully dissent.
I respectfully agree with that dissent.
So this case had like these justices going, I mean, like the writing is so eloquent. And these justices are basically being like, respectfully, fuck this court.
Yeah. Hey.
And then did you want more information about like the reasoning? At least from what I could figure out?
Yeah, like what are we doing?
What was the court split?
What is that? What is
Why
any
are
of
we
that?
so heartless in this nation?
So basically, the state has no duty to provide protective services to individuals. So basically, they went along with the, it's supposed to be like the state is, the Constitution, the Due Process Clause handcuffs the state. It doesn't like give everybody snacks,
That's why protect and serve is always in quotation marks.
Yeah. So, so they're saying that, even though there's this whole DSS, social services, caseworker, like, so it that doesn't actually establish like a special relationship that has that where there's a constitutional duty to protect. That duty only applies when the state has like come in and like imposed limitations on a person's freedom. And so they specifically said, if the person's in prison or if they're like institutionalized in a hospital. And then there's a footnote. They were like, arguably you could try to make the case if a child was put in a foster home, but like, we're not going to like take that up. So basically when you're talking about an individual getting beaten up by another individual, the state has no duty to act or to protect.
Even if the individual is a parent, guardian, child relationship.
Yeah. And then they were like, if the state had snatched the kid up, then they would have been accused of violating the parent, like the father's parental rights.
So it's like, what is the solution here? Like, are we just supposed to expect that, like, if kids that are suffering at the hands of abusive parents, even if social services is called in to do checks or whatever, it's just like, yeah, we're here doing our checks, but like, I don't know, if the kid dies, like, that's not our fault.
So they did identify a couple of so basically, and to me, this is what was the most irritating, because they pointed out ways of redress, and it was like, so it was like a procedural, like technical issue. So they were like, well, the state law established social services and like, there's DSS, they're supposed to go in, it's like state law, it gets like reported and whatever. And this is a point that I remember learning about this case basically in a seminar that was led by the late, great Albert Grzynskas Jr., who was an amazing attorney. He passed away a few years ago, but he pointed this out, that basically the state law created a duty so JD and mom could have gone after the state under tort law. So a tort action basically alleges a dereliction of duty that is the direct cause of damages.
You sued wrong, kid. Better luck next time.
Yeah.
That's the basic idea.
Yeah. A tort is that like
so screwed.
Is that an actor did something wrong and it caused like actual direct harm, but it's a different thing from a constitutional violation.
Oh, you filed Form 96FB1. You needed 96FG2.
That was kind of my feeling.
That was my gut. That was my gut as well. It's like it just sounded like, you're suing for that? Oh, okay. Interesting. So it's like the lesson learned here, get a better lawyer.
Yeah, don't screw up your paperwork. Jesus.
And this is the slippery slope we fall down.
Oh, and there's an additional couple things. At sort of the end, the Supreme Court was like, if the people of Wisconsin don't like this, they can change the law, but they can't expect the court to change like the Constitution by expanding its application beyond its intention.
I'm gonna guess the people of Wisconsin didn't care and did nothing.
No, there was a huge outcry about this.
Oh,
this is before cell phones, and we were all desensitized.
Yeah, they were like, are you kidding? Like, this kid is, whatever. And then there was a footnote that said that, like, oh, the petitioners had this really interesting argument that, there were state laws around child protection that you could argue, like, the kid is entitled to protection under the state law. And so that entitlement would then have some due process protections against deprivation. But they were like, that was only argued in the Supreme Court brief that they argued it in the thing that they sent to the Supreme Court, but they didn't put in their original complaint when they originally did the lawsuit. They didn't argue it to the Court of Appeals. They didn't put it in the petition for cert. It just kind of came up during an argument. So they're like, oh, you didn't bring it up early enough, so we're not actually going to address this point.
Oh, Jesus.
We know about it. We have all the laws. But because you didn't do it, you didn't say it at the right time.
Yeah.
Or enough. You didn't use the magic words enough. We're gonna pretend it doesn't
This is
exist.
basically the IRS.
Oh, I hate it here.
I do have a couple of follow-up.
see
This
a
is like
theme.
separate from the lawsuit and the Supreme Court finding, as sort of a postscript. So JD's father ended up pleading no contest to charges of felony abuse. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison, and then he ultimately served a little less than 2. JD, what?
Well.
Womp womp.
Womp womp.
JD was adopted by new parents, and he was taken into their care when he was 12. And then in 2015, at the age of 36, he passed away.
R.I.P. JD.
There wasn't very many
Gone but never
details
forgotten.
in the obituary. It was like he was known for this one case, but there was more to him than that, and he was, very loved and missed.
I think the thing that sticks out to me is what, I don't know if this was your line, Nikki, or if this was from Al, but it was the line that this case determined that you are entitled to protection from the government, but you are not entitled to protection from the government.
Yes. Oh yeah, that was my little summative line.
Which is just what? It's just the inflection. The inflection matters.
It's a tonal language, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we won't murder you outright without due process, but man, if you start shit, you're on your own.
It's all bad.
In my research for this case, I was. This is a really conflicting one, because I totally understand, and part of me agrees with Rehnquist's sort of like this idea of like the government can't be everywhere, it can't be responsible for everything all the time. But like, oh my god, like it's just awful. Like,
and especially
can't.
Yeah.
Like there's it's just like I get it. I get this. I get the like the specific reading of the text, but at the same time, and I also get the idea of like they really sued on the wrong thing. Like
Paperwork.
Yeah. It seems like, and this is just my interpretation of it, not a lawyer, is they were really trying to set a precedent to protect other children, not to get to recover some damages. That it was really about like the government needs to do more. That's what it feels like to me. Yeah. And the Supreme Court was like, no, it doesn't. No, it's good.
What really another thing that kind of bothered me was that there was a line in there of like, the state, like he really wasn't any worse off than he would have been if the state hadn't acted at all. He was with like his bio father, wasn't a state actor. The state came in and like took custody and like whatever. But then like if the state had never come in at all, like he would have just stayed. Like I mean, I got the point, but I was like, ugh.
That 8 days that the hospital owned him was best days of his life.
The best days of his life.
Hospital
I just
jello,
will never
man.
get over the fact. What is the point of even having social services if they don't come in and socially serve? Like it's like
I
a bureaucratic
feel yeah.
disaster.
I feel like social services always gets the bad, like in all of Hollywood. They always
Yeah.
get the bad angles. They're always like, "Oh, the bad people come and take your kids away." I'm like, this could have been something where they like actually
They
stepped
could
in
have been
and said,
heroes.
To
"Oh
be
wow, yeah,
fair,
we're
you
going to take
do
this
never
really
hear
bad
about it. The
situation."
stories where they're like, we went to this house and everything was fine because they took all our advice from last time. They don't make movies
Yeah.
about that. They don't have Supreme Court
Or,
cases about that.
I'm sure there's plenty of examples too where they did take children away, or instigated some court proceedings that led to, a child being placed with another caregiver or into the foster system. I mean, they do that stuff all the time, and maybe we don't hear about it so much. We don't hear about the successes, right? We don't hear the successes. We only
you
hear about the
it when
failures.
like the angry bio parent shows up at the state offices with a gun and kills the social worker responsible.
Womp womp. My cat just meowed in protest of the whole thing.
Point is, we live in a society.
We do.
Yeah, I'm still conflicted on this one. Like, I get the structural argument. I understand, I understand the majority opinion, but it's like I guess I'm split between like, rational brain and emotional brain.
Yeah.
Like they can't reconcile. Like, what's the government's purpose other than
For
this?
the people. Yeah.
My takeaway is that my profound cynicism is actually extremely well-founded and well-calibrated.
Yeah, maybe you should have a career change and...
Yeah, maybe I should be like a judicicar or whatever the hell these people are. Is that what they are?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer.
Not a lawyer.
Not a lawyer.
Nope.
Justicar. That's the word I was going for. I'm
That
a
sounds like a
Justicar
thing.
of the
Justicar?
United States Eagle Force.
Sounds real.
Space Force.
And hey, you can do no work and do a bad job and never get in trouble for it.
Lifetime appointment.
Sounds like a nice gig. Sign me up.
Lifetime appointment. The only threat is congressional impeachment.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Have we adequately depressed our honored guests? Because I feel like really any show about the Supreme Court, ultimately that's what we're talking about.
who are the honored guests? The people listening?
The alternative is... I'm sorry, go ahead, Nikki.
Well, I was saying, like, they did have a line in there of, like, if this pisses you off, then, like, you need to go, like, agitate to the legislature, to make change.
Yeah. Call your representatives.
Vote.
But
Go vote.
yeah.
The other side of it is parents don't have to deal with, jackbooted thugs kicking in the door X amount of time after X amount of time to just like, throw the apartment and make sure everything is fine because they have an expressed constitutional requirement to proactively police parents, right? I mean, like I think that's really ultimately...
I got
that's
the right
the place
to whip
where
my
it's like
4-year-old into a coma, and that's what makes me free.
America.
Jeez. America.
Maybe it's like
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like maybe the slippery slope argument won out on this one. Like, if we do this, then
that's giving the government too much power.
We most certainly are on a slippery slope. That's for sure.
This was 1980s, though.
Like a slippery cavern, just falling.
I feel like we've already fallen into the cavern.
I feel like the subtext is, hey, the Supreme Court matters, and you should all vote.
That's true.
Vote, 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 vote. Vote, 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 vote. Vote!
But not for the Supreme Court, because they're appointed for life.
That's Well, I mean, yes. Well,
Chosen by
that's
God,
true.
like myself.
Chose. Yes.
All you have is second derivative efforts, like voting.
Anybody have any last cynical jabs they need to get out?
I reflect.
There it is.
Yeah,
We got
nothing
there.
nothing
High fives.
cynical, but I do want to just throw this out into the universe that I hope that the next case that we review is about, I don't know, like a cucumber or the paranormal. So if we can get either of those two genres up, I'm ready to go.
Oh man, give us the one where the Supreme Court decides what a sandwich is or not.
Yeah.
Hot dog or not hot dog?
Maybe we'll do a
Oh,
special episode where we'll retry the Ghostbusters from Ghostbusters 2.
Oh, guilty. I'm entering this with extreme prejudice. Goddamn liberals.
So did that judge.
It's true, Your Honor. This man has no dick.
On that note, I think that will do it for us here at Relitigated.
Yeah.
Gonna get that promotion any day.
To be like, yeah. On that note, like and subscribe.
Link in bio. Link in bio.
Yeah. I think we're also supposed to throw our socials out there, but
No.
But we have no social presence for this show. Not yet.
Nerds.
Maybe not ever.
Social media is the evil that is pervasive throughout our world. That's how I feel.
Supreme Court should make Facebook illegal.
Save it for another episode.
That's fair.
But yeah, thanks to our esteemed justices
Thanks
for being
for having
here.
us. God knows why you invited me, but thank you.
For having
thank you.
for having an open Thursday night. I can't imagine why your night was free.
You don't want to know. It's fine.
Thanks to Nikki, my co-host, for the research and the assistance getting this all together. My name is Jarret. I'm not a lawyer.
I am Nikki. I'm also not a lawyer.
We hope you'll stop up by and listen to the next one if we can find another free night to depress ourselves.
We will do something better next time. More uplifting, maybe. We'll see.
Maybe.
No promises.
You don't know. You're just gonna have to listen. So there you have it. 2-1 decision in favor of the respondent. That'll do it for us, but before we go, thanks again to my co-host and to our 3 justices. The music in this episode was written by Studio Columna and Toby Smith and provided by Pixabay. Audio mixing and producing was done poorly by me. Thanks for listening. We hope you found it interesting enough to subscribe and like the podcast. We don't have any social presence, at least not yet, so you'll just have to catch us here on the next episode. Until then, I'm Jarret, and this has been Relitigated. Take care.